All right, hi everybody. This is going to be a demonstration on how to use components inside of Figma. We are going to start by building a component, and then I'm going to start talking a little bit about when and why you would do this. So the reason I do it in that order is because I feel like it's easier to understand the why and when if you understand better exactly what a component is and how they're built inside of Figma. All right, so let me switch you over to my computer here, and we're going to start by taking a frame. Right, so let's have a frame built here. We're going to need this just to know kind of how large to make these components. All right, we're going to start by building a text input field. So if I select the frame, I can see that the width is 375 pixels. All right, I'm going to use a 15 pixel margin on each side of my screen. Okay, and so what that means is that this input field that I draw, okay, this rectangle should be 345 pixels wide. All right, so I got that by taking the width of this frame, which is 375, okay, and subtracting 30 for the margin, 15 each, and you get 345. Okay, you can do it in your head. You can also do it like this. You can go 375 minus 30 inside of this width calculator and hit enter, and it'll do the math for you just like that. Okay, so anyways, this is going to be our input field. So let's make a background white, and let's go ahead and add a stroke here with 1 pixel width, and let's go ahead and round the corners to like 4. Okay, that will soften them up a little bit. So here we have the field. Let's go ahead and add a label. Okay, input label. I actually want that to be capitalized. Size is looking pretty good. Looks like we're 15 font. Okay, so we have this input field here, and you know, as we go and build our application, we can totally just take this and duplicate it, and then just change things. So you know, we could say this is like email, this is first name, last name, and so on, right? And we just keep building our app using the same input field. You can even group them, make them easier to drag and duplicate that way. But the problem comes when we want to start making edits, right? Or we want to start duplicating any of the styles in here to make a different input field. You know, say we want to make a text area. That's fine. We can just take this and we can extend this down, right? Now we have a text area instead of a text input. But say we want to start making changes to some of these styles. Like for this example, you know, say we wanted this to be a blue text now. Okay, we can make it once and it'll change that input field. But all these other ones, we're gonna have to go through and do the same thing, right? So we'd have to go through here and make these blue. I made those different blue. But you know, you could do that, but you're gonna have to do that maybe say 300 times across your entire application if that's, you know, if there's a lot of screens to it. So the first reason we build components is because we can make changes across all the components using just that main component. So first we need a main component. Let's back up here. Let's just use this one. Okay. So what we want to do is I'm going to grab these, okay? And I'm not going to group them or anything like that. We are going to label these though. This is where labeling becomes really important. So let's call this input field. Okay, so here we have the input label and the input field. Okay, let's go ahead and grab just both of those, not the whole iPhone, just the pieces inside of it that make up this text input. Okay, and we're going to go ahead and click this little button right here that says create component. All right, so here we have component 1. All right, let's go ahead and give this a better name of text input. So we can tell it's a component, okay, because A, it's purple, right? It's, constraining properties are purple, as well as its label is purple. It even has this little symbol in the layers panel and on the title here. It's 4 triangles arranged in a diamond shape, okay? Or sorry, it's 4 squares arranged in a diamond shape. Okay, and so what we can do with this now is we can duplicate it and pull it into our designs, right? and say we wanted to make a change to one of them or to all of them, we can make it just to one of them now. So here, if I wanted to make this blue now, right? If I change that input label and make that blue, it propagates across all of them, right? And it'll do that through all the versions of it inside my app, okay? If I want to make a change to this, I can change this. I can make this smaller. I can make it taller, right? Again, let's back up a little bit. So that's the first reason, right? First reason we build components is so that when we need to make small incremental changes, we don't have to make them hundreds or dozens of times, however many you have, right? You can just go to this main component and make those changes. Now, one thing I recommend is as you start building your application and you get more and more screens, right? Whoops. What I don't like is as you build more components, they start getting dispersed throughout all of your screens and it starts getting a little bit unorganized. So what I recommend is having a new page up here, right, in your pages log called components. Right now it's blank because I haven't added anything to it. But what I can do is I can take this text input component, right, make sure you select the whole thing, and I can right click on it here in the layers panel. I can right click and I can say move to page, move to components page. And what that will do is, let's see, we got to zoom out to find it here. It will move it to this page, and anytime I create a component, I can do that, and I'll start creating a collection of components on this components page. They won't be dispersed throughout my designs here, right? Now, when I want to use them, I can either come to the component page, copy this, and paste it into the wireframe, or I can go to the Assets tab here. It's right next to Layers, right? And under Local Components, I see my input label. I can grab it and paste it in here, right? Go back to Layers. Let's grab this Components page. Let's come in here. Let's make a change to it just to check that everything's still connected. All right, so let's make that blue. Let's go back to our designs. They're all in there, right? Now, there's a couple things that I can change here without disconnecting it from the component, meaning there's a couple things I can change here and still receive any updates to that component that are made. Okay, the first is data inside of the component. All right, so that's things like this label, right? I can come here and I can change this to be something else, like maybe I wanted to say email. You can see it doesn't make any changes to this main component, right? It doesn't propagate across any of the other versions of that component. It's just limited to this child component, right? Now, the other thing I can change is I can change the fill color of this, right? I could change this to red. Looks horrible, but just for demonstration purposes, I could change this to red. Again, doesn't change anything about this, right? You'll notice, though, if I go and change this to black, this one doesn't receive the update. That's because I changed data inside of a component element. Okay, so if this rectangle, this input field, is one of the elements inside the component, I can't change the data inside of that. Okay, it would have to be raw data, something like a piece of text. It can't be a piece of data inside of an element of the component, right? This is all that. So the way that I clarify these is all of these properties, these are styles, right, of this element, okay? If I change any of the data of those styles, it's going to disconnect that from this main component. So any changes I make in the styles to this main component won't carry over to this child one, okay? So again, if you make changes to raw data like text and numbers and things like that, you should be just fine. But if you start making style changes, it's going to disconnect that from the main component. Okay, so let's back up again. Okay, let's come here. Let's get rid of this one because we've created a Frankenstein there. Okay, so the last thing I want to talk about is granularity. Okay, so the more that you break these components up into smaller components, the more control you're going to have over them without having to build a whole new component. Okay, so here's my example. Here I have this text input, right? And this is made up of a couple different elements that could potentially be turned into their own component, right? So say I had like a drop-down field or something like that. I could take this and, you know, I could add a triangle, or whoops, that was text. I could add a triangle, and we could make a simple drop down field here out of this pretty easily by just adding something like that. Okay. Select. Okay, so then all of a sudden we have a drop down made out of this component, right? And we can now come here, and if we change all the labels to be black again, it will propagate across the other components that are built with it, right? But what I really recommend doing is, to prevent tying them together too much, is to granularize them. So take this label, copy it, move it outside. All right, we're gonna make this our own component. This is gonna be called an input label, okay? Same with this. Take this rectangle, move this outside, make it its own component. All right, this is gonna be the input field. And then we're gonna go ahead and create a new component. Now, we just deleted that main component, okay? And what it's gonna do there is it's gonna break the whole system. So we need to make sure, if you delete that main component, that you plan on replacing it. All right, but we do. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna take this input label. In fact, you know what? I'm going to do this way just to demonstrate it. I'm going to take this input label, and I'm going to take this field. We're going to combine them to make a text input, okay? So then we're going to grab these, and we'll then create them as their own component, okay? And we're going to call this one now. We're going to call this text input. All right, so now we can make small changes to this one component through the individual pieces of that component, right? So just like we did before, right? If we make a change to this main component, it'll make a change to its child component inside of here. Okay, this child component just happens to make up a main component, this text input, but that's why it's called a nested component, right? So we have a component here nested inside of another component, right? It's kind of like component inception, if you will, all right? But anyways, the big advantage to this is, say we go ahead and make like a text area. Okay, text area is just like an input field, but the field part of it is much larger. It's meant for like large paragraphs or something like that, right? So we come here and we go ahead and make this its own component, right? So now we have a text input, and we have a text area made with the same parent components. So if we make a change to this, make it black again, you can see it propagates over all the components that include this main component right here, right? So as I explain it, to me it sounds ridiculous because I keep calling different things component, right? Like there should only be one type of component. But really here, when I do this, I'm hoping that you see how all of these are components, just some are the original versions of those components, right? These are technically child components of this stuff up here, right? If I go ahead and make this gray or black, right, it's going to carry over to both of these because, again, this is the main version of that component. So if you're ever building with these, right, so let's go ahead, get rid of these. Let's add them in. Okay, so we have this text input. Okay, and we have this text area. So if you're ever building with these and you do feel like you want to make a change to it, instead of coming back to the components page, because eventually there's going to be hundreds of these things, right? Instead of coming back here and looking for it, you can actually, anytime you're using like a child component or something like that, you can right click on it and you can say, go to main component. And what it will do is it will take you to that component page and select the main version of that component so that you can edit it, right? And then same thing, if you come in here and you say, go to main component, again, it'll take me back to that other version of it. So you can see how the hierarchy works here with the nested component, okay? So that's our demonstration, all right? I recommend watching it again if you're confused. and following along, you know, pausing the video, doing what you need to do to follow along. By doing it a couple times, that's, I think, probably the best way to learn how to do this. Just remember that all of these are their own components. It's just some of these that are more complex, like these two, are built up of these main parent components, okay? So any questions you can ask me on Wednesday during the Q&A. You can ask me over Canvas. There's also lots of tutorials out there on YouTube and on the Figma website that explain how to build components and how to keep them organized, okay? So until then, thank you for watching, and I'll see you Wednesday.